स्टार्ट करें? अच्छा, hello everyone. We are discussing approach to political science and international relation, and we are approaching it through the questions which has been asked by UPSC in past, and that will help you in not only knowing the contents part, but also the strategic part, the answer writing skill, the art of answer writing, because art is precisely defined as skillful application of knowledge. If you have knowledge how to write answer, but if you are not applying it skillfully, you lack art. So art of cracking the exam, art of writing, everywhere we require it. Anyway, so coming to the question directly, that question says that the notion of balance of power, the notion of balance of power, is notoriously full of confusion, in light of the above quotation, do you think that balance of power, the concept of balance of power, concept of balance of power concept is still relevant? This is the question. First, you must have proper understanding of the question, then only you will be able to write a good answer. So balance, the notion of balance of power system is notoriously word is used in negative sense, notoriously full of confusion. And in light of the above quotation, do you think that balance of power, concept of balance of power is still relevant? So first we must understand what is balance of power, what was typical European balance of power system, and then second part is it still relevant even after the end of typical European balance of power system. So first we see the word, this is the very important concept in political science, balance of power. So first we have to explain this, and then we will be writing the answer. So first you understand balance of power system. As the name suggests, balance of power means a rough equilibrium in power distribution. That is balance. As you know, power is a relational concept. It is the phenomenon of all relationship. It's not intrinsic isolated concept, it's a relative concept. So power is the ability or capacity of more powerful to influence the action and behavior of less powerful in a desired manner. That is what power is. So power is in terms of ability or capacity of more powerful vis-a-vis less powerful. So balance of power means a rough equilibrium in power distribution. Rough equilibrium. Equilibrium. So first you need to understand that whenever there is primacy to power in political science, it belongs to the theory called realist theory. Realist theory, or later neorealist theory, focuses on power politics. Power politics. As you know, the role of power or force or coercion is more in international political system in contrast to domestic political system. The reason is that international political system is not a proper political system. International laws are weak laws. They are not enforced by a sovereign authority. UN or League of Nations are not sovereign authority. Sovereignty is the feature of nation state. So where laws are weak, force is frequently being used and power is being frequently applied. So international political system is not hierarchical in contrast to domestic political system. International political system is not proper because of lack of structural differentiation and functional specialization. In domestic politics, executive, legislature, judiciary, bureaucracy, these structures are differentiated with defined responsibilities, with different functions. But in international political system, there is no hierarchy. There is, the laws are being agreed voluntarily. The membership is optional, which can be, a country can withdraw from it at any point of time. Why I am discussing all those things? Because you must understand that international political system is not a proper political system. International laws are weak laws, so power is frequently used in international politics. So power, countries or nation states are similar in their needs but different in their capacities and powers, and this leads to disequilibrium or differential power distribution. So distribution of power it is talking about, and in human relationship, whatever is true in the relationship of nation states as well. If there is equilibrium, if there is a balance, no side would try to go for war or use of power or force. Otherwise, it may be also at receiving end. It does not know the end. And same is the case in international politics. If a country or nation state is having disproportionately higher power than other country, then it will be sure of its victory. Then there will be more incentive for war. But if there is equilibrium, there will be no incentive for war. Results may be adverse. So war would be the symptom of disequilibrium in power distribution. War is mostly initiated based on calculation that our power is more than our adversary, and so we can be sure of our victory and there will be happy ending. In Hindi it is said, बराबर वाले को देखकर गुस्सा आता नहीं है और कमजोर को देखकर गुस्सा थमता नहीं है. In Hindi it is said. The point is that whenever there is disequilibrium in power, when there is a gap in power, then the stronger will have incentive to wage war. So in balance of power system is in realist domain. It talks about centrality of power. It has certain presumptions that you must be knowing. And I will first discuss balance of power in general, then typical European balance of power system and its relevance part in the present world. So there are certain pre-assumptions of the typical European balance of power system. As you know, that Europe had 30 years of war, 1618 to 1648. and finally Treaty of Westphalia was signed. Treaty of Westphalia. I am explaining, then I will be writing the answer in a proper manner. First you must have understanding of the contents, then only you will be writing. So Treaty of Westphalia, after, as you know, in European countries there was Catholic Protestant war between countries, and that led to 1648 Treaty of Westphalia. What was the system before that? Although question is not demanding regarding that, but you must have idea about it just for understanding. There was a Roman system, Roman Empire system before 1648, where there were confederation of nation states, confederation of states, in fact, under overall supremacy of Roman Empire. This was the system. Roman Empire around 1st century AD, later it was disintegrated. That was the background. But Treaty of Westphalia, after 30 years of war, these countries realized that nation state should be accepted as fundamental unit of international political system. Nation state. Nation is a modern concept, and in early modern period large nation states emerged under strong monarch. But recognition of sovereignty of nation state was there in Treaty of Westphalia. Recognition, mutual reciprocal recognition of sovereignty of nation state for international peace, at least peace in Europe, with secured boundaries, sovereign rights of every country to secure itself, to have security and defense, to have progress, to be prevented from interference by other country, with recognized, defined, stable boundaries. So Treaty of Westphalia, where there was mutual and reciprocal recognition of sovereignty. And this is the reason why 1600 to 1900, roughly, mostly after Treaty of Westphalia, there was typical balance of European balance of power system. In this particular European balance of power system, 6 to 7 European countries were ruling the roost, namely England, France, Holland, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Hungary, Prussia. So Europe was the center of world politics, and after 30 years of war, because wars brought tragedies, collateral damage in terms of loss of both men and material, so ultimately the wisdom prevailed and they realized that we must have reciprocal and mutual recognition. However, this does not mean that all conflicts and war ended. No, it helped in establishing peace to certain extent, but international relations are full of imperfections, and international political system is anarchic, if not chaotic. It is inherently conflictual because of the reasons I told earlier. So typical European balance of power system was there, and it is also called balance of power system, also called billiards ball model. Balance of power system, typical European, 1600 to almost 1900. There was a transitional period with the advent of concept of collective security, although you can write up to 1919. With the advent of collective security, there was dilution, and after Second World War, balance of terror replaced balance of power. That was typical. So 6 billiards ball model. Billiards ball model. Arnold Wolfers gave this concept that there were these nation states became hard shells and they were colliding with each other. 6 to 7 European countries were colliding with each other periodically. As I was talking about presumption, So this is from realist domain. Balance of power system believes that power can be counterbalanced by power only and power exclusively. Antidote of power is power only and power exclusively, not the goodwill. And there is inevitability of conflicts due to imperfection in international political system. So in this balance of power system, all were European countries. So all believed in liberalism, capitalism. There was no rival socialism or fascism. So groupings of countries was based not on ideology, but based on national interest, which was dynamic, which was changeable. So Britain played the role of laughing third, switching sides and balancing the power, so that no country or no group of country becomes so powerful that it threatens other security. So nation states will use various means to balance the power of their adversary or their neighbor or their other group of countries or other countries by various means, including alliance, counter-alliance, buffer zone, compensation, divide and rule, partition, intervention and war, and neutrality, means winning the neutrality of potential ally of your adversary. These were the instruments of balance of power, but question is not regarding the instruments of balance of power, but you must have understanding of balance of power system. So in typical European balance of power system, the countries were switching sides easily. Switching sides easily. To explain this, I specifically mentioned the role of England, which played the role of laughing third. Ideology based grouping. Defections are less or impossible or very less likely. But here there was no ideological differences between 6 to 7 European countries. So nation states based on their national interest were switching sides. This is different from balance of terror or Cold War. In Cold War there were two poles, there were two superpowers. Here it was multipolar with 6 to 7 European countries who were major powers, not superpowers. It was only after Second World War that USA and Soviet Union emerged as superpowers. Here in balance of power system, there were no superpowers. There were great powers only. And no ideological differences. Switching sides was easier. And wars were waged with traditional weapons. Wars were waged with traditional weapons, not nuclear weapons. So there was no question of annihilation of the world. So there was more incentive for war. There was no nuclear deterrence. Since wars were waged with traditional weapons, so no country could be annihilated, or there was no threat of annihilation of the world, or there was nothing like MAD, mutually assured destruction. These were there in Cold War, in bipolar system. Here it was balance of power. I am writing it balance of power, BOP, balance of power. So even a defeated country would get re-entry. Even, this is another presumption, even a defeated country or nation state would get re-entry into the system. It's not that this was God ordained or natural balance of power system. In fact, periodically various leaders and statesmen tried to destabilize this balance of power system in their favor. Be it Napoleon, be it Hitler, or be it at one point of time Holland. So they were trying to destabilize the balance of power system in their favor, but other countries were not sitting idle. Power is always calculated in relational terms: military power, political power, economic power. To pursue their national interest, they were used various means: war, military means, non-military means, soft means. Soft balancing would be, we will be seeing that soft balancing is now followed. But at that point of time, there were two kinds of balancing, internal and external. Balancing was of two kinds. One was internal and another was external. Internal balance, where countries or nation states will realize that they need to increase their domestic strength so that other countries don't become relatively more powerful. So this is internal balancing by increasing own power, own military power, own political power, own defense power, own economic power, own speed power. Powers have different forms and manifestations. This is internal balancing. And second, external. Even by doing all those internal exercises, if nation state would not be able to balance the power of other country or rival country or adversaries, then they will go for alliances, counter alliances with other group countries, other member countries in against the more powerful country, so that other country would not be able to think that it is fighting weaker. Group is stronger than individual. So if individual country would not be able to cope up with the excessive power of the rival, it will go for alliances. As I said, different means were there, A, B, C, D pin. That is alliances, counter alliances, B for buffer zone, C for compensation, D for divide and rule, P partition, high intervention in war, and finally neutrality. These were the means. So these are the presumptions of balance of power system. This is in a realist domain. This acknowledges the role of power in politics. This realism was replaced by the idealism of collective security by 14-point program of Woodrow Wilson, American president, who gave 14-point program in 1918. Based on that, League of Nations was formed based on idealism of collective security. And successor of League of Nations after Second World War was United Nations, again based on collective security. Collective is the means, security is the end. But collective security is an idealism. Balance of power is in realism. I referred collective security only for contrast. Here question is not demanding collective security. Just you can refer them a bit to contrast. Because question is relating balance of power system. Notoriously full of confusion. Why there was confusion? Because there was alliances, there were counter alliances. Adding to that, there was mercantilism. Proto-industrial phase, before industrialization, 1500 to 1750. Countries were involving into economic nationalism. Wanted to have more trade surplus with other country. Trade barriers for imports, and wanted more market access to other countries. Other countries were doing the same. This also led to confusion. Balance of power system, there was no collective security, there was no League of Nations, there was poor international governance, international laws, weak, anarchic. And realism, as you know, that in realism there were no permanent friends and foes. So realism is although considered as timeless wisdom, but realism believes in 3S: safety, security, survival, and self-help. Safety, survival, and self-help. No permanent friends and foes, but only interest. There is certainty and predictability in relationship when there are permanent friends and foes, when there is ideological cohesion, when there is ideology-based groups of the nation. It was not so. When there is a proper political system, with structural differentiation, with functional specialization, with hierarchy, in contrast to domestic politics. Here there were no permanent friends and foes, friends or foes. So this is the substantiating the question given, that balance of power notion of balance of power was notoriously full of confusion. So there was reason for confusion. Confusion was attributed to no permanent predictability, no permanent foes and friends, unpredictability in relationship, no ideological commitment, and countries were switching sides like anything. Poor international governance, lack of concept of collective security, no collective security, no functionalism. Woodrow Wilson, Immanuel Kant favored international peace, functionalism, globalization, and people to people contact, not only government to government, but people to people contact at the social level, cultural level, humanitarian level. So bonding would be stronger, but it was not so. The balance of power system, countries were hard shells, and like billiards ball, they were colliding. They are not porous. And state was playing important role, singular role for communication. There was no information and communication technology. There was no IT revolution, and there was no porosity. Hard shells, the states were the only having monopoly of communication, and military means were mostly used for balancing the power. So this is also called billiards ball model. And let me clarify that balance of power is to be distinguished from bandwagoning. Bandwagoning is also, you must understand, bandwagon strategy. Bandwagoning when a country feels that opposition to a major power or superpower, the cost of it is more than the benefits, then within the hegemonic system it don't challenge the power of superpower. Like India for so long in 90s followed bandwagoning strategy, not challenging the American hegemony, working within the hegemonic system to serve its national interest. So bandwagoning is not a balancing. Not balancing. We are talking about balance of power. So I referred bandwagoning for again contrasting with balancing of power. In balancing of power, in traditional balancing of power, military means were used. And in nowadays, after 1991, we see soft balancing through mostly non-military means like diplomatic means, like economic means, like sanctions. They are non-military means, soft balancing act. So, as far as balance of power system is concerned, the first part of the question is it was notoriously full of confusion. Why notoriously? Because it was not natural, nor divine, nor certain. The condition was fluid, uncertain. Then rivalry was there. Changing sides was easier. And not only alliances and counter alliances, secret alliances. All these also became reason for various wars, confusion. Because dilemma always is the recipe for wars, confusion, and you don't know the approach or stand or action or next stand or next action of your rival. So many times preempting actions were done in wake of confusion. So confusion statement was partly right. There was confusion in balance of power system, in typical European balance of power system, and adding to that there was miscalculation. In physics, when you quantify power in terms of joule per second, it is different. Here, you cannot quantify, because power is not one-dimensional rate of doing work. Power is military power, economic power, social power, hegemonic power, ideological power, speed power. There are so many forms and manifestations of power. Internal stability, social stability power. Country which will have more social stability, less diversity, less internal conflict, will be more powerful, will be more playing an important role in world politics. So miscalculation. Even Hitler thought that it could defeat the Allied powers. So it started Second World War. Even in First World War, Germany thought that it could defeat England. It was miscalculation. It was proved to be miscalculation with the following defeat of Germany. But there was no objective method to measure political power or military power or economic power. So miscalculation is there because it cannot be quantified. So there is subjectivity in calculation. There is no objective power meter to calculate the power, relative power of the nation states. So this also, miscalculation also led to many wars, many imperfections, and adding to that in this phase, mercantilism instead of free market economy, lack of functionalism, poor international governance. As I told, functionalism favor not only state to state political engagement but people to people contact, cultural contact, bonding, interdependence, material interdependence. That was not the case. Although Woodrow Wilson favored that, but that was not the case in balance of power system. So it was notoriously, it's true that, partly true that it was full of confusion. Why I am saying partly? Because at least Treaty of Westphalia helped in, was a stabilizing factor, was a factor for peace. It was not a perfect factor for peace. It was partly preventing conflicts, at least in European countries. Outside European countries, there was scramble for colonies. So imperialism, every European imperial country wanted to have more and more colonies. So they're competing with each other. So they were fighting across the sea. You see 7 years of war, Anglo-French war, Crimean war, Anglo-Russian war, so many wars, Napoleonic wars during balance of power system. So many, during the typical European balance of power system, there were so many wars. This explains that notoriously it was full of confusion. And in balance of power system, you will find that the further reasons for imperfections was imperialism, no collective security, poor international governance, weak international laws. In fact, all the political scientists of international relation agree on that international laws are weaker than domestic laws, weaker relatively. International political system is not a proper political system. It is not held by a sovereign authority. International political system is not division of structural division, functional specialization. There is no secularization of culture. Secularization of culture means, political culture means progressive, dynamic and informed decision making process. So many times clandestine designs, clandestine programs, also leading to cascading chain wars. In billiards ball model, there were no 1 or 2 power centers. In fact, you will see that in Cold War there were 2 poles, America and Soviet Union. If they agree, agreement between 2 poles is easier, but agreement among 7 poles, 6 to 7 poles would be more difficult. This is another reason, that is multipolarity was there. Multipolarity was there. And one of the reasons for no third world war is good international governance by and large by UN. Another reason is nuclear age. Nuclear age has brought the concept of nuclear deterrence, that no nuclear war can be won because nobody would be surviving on earth. So one of the reasons for prevention of third world war is that of nuclear age. That was not the case in traditional the balance of power system. So this we have discussed the balance of power system. Typically, first you have to explain what is balance of power, how it is in realist domain, what are the concepts of realism, and how international political system is different from domestic political system. Because this question is of second paper. So naturally it is dealing with the international politics, and power is always relational concept. So internal balancing, external balancing, you can one line refer the means of balancing in one line, ABCD pin. You can refer that, but not to take more words in those. First explain balance of power system in general, then typical European balance of power system, and just in one line referring the context before that. Before it there was a Roman empire system with confederation of states. Then Treaty of Westphalia, by which sovereignty was recognized, secured boundaries, citizenship, national boundary, national territory, national interest, national power, national sovereignty, all were mutually and reciprocally recognized. And then you have to say that this is not neither natural nor divine, and nor was desired by any power. Every country or every nation state would like to have disproportionately more power than others. So there will be constant rivalry, there will be constant arms race, constant rivalry, arms race. Confusion would be also due to that. There are so many n number of reasons for highlighting the confusion during balance of power system, but you have to not be lopsided. You have to write at the same time that no, it was one of the factors for international peace in absence of collective security, League of Nations and United Nations, and other reasons for confusion like mercantilism, like imperialism, like this arms race. All these were other reasons for confusion, and wars, scramble for colonies, poor international governance, weak international laws, and billiards ball model. Then now the second part of the question, now we are coming to the second part of the question, that in light of the above quotation, do you think that the concept of balance of power is still relevant? Means second part of the question is asking you to explain the relevance of balance of power system in present context. So how you will write that part? First of all, you have to clarify that typical European balance of power system was over with the advent of United Nations and collective security. However, nation states always try to balance the power of other during Cold War and after as well, as both superpowers thought the relationship to be zero-sum game. One would be getting at the power of the at the expense of the other, so balancing the power of the other. Now the question is regarding present. So contemporary period, 1991, there was unipolar world. At least militarily, it is unipolar. So militarily, no other power could challenge America. But this does not mean that there will be no balancing. There would be balancing. Some countries like India in 90s followed bandwagoning, which is different from balancing. India was not trying to balance America, but was trying to work within hegemonic system. And even BRICS is to promote multilateralism. It's not a military alliance. Even the Quad is not a military alliance. Yes, the recent Joe Biden's AUKUS, that is Australia, UK, US, is a military alliance. That is precisely to balance China. So, most of the balancing in 1991 and 21st century, which is being used, most of the balancing are soft balancing act. Soft balancing act. Not all. Soft balancing involves what? Diplomacy. Soft balancing involves what? Sanctions. Trade war. So, as a concept, is still there. As we have so many examples, as in wake of growing unilateralism of US in 90s, be it on issue of Iraq war or Yugoslavia, NATO's bombardment on Serbia in 90s, or be it Afghanistan war 2001, or be it invasion on Iraq by bypassing Security Council, all these assertion of US, unilateral assertion of US was symbol of the huge disequilibrium. So no one country could balance the power of US. So BRICS was envisaged. So New Development Bank was envisaged to counter IMF and World Bank. And Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, although in this particular space you will not be able to write all those things, but I am just explaining for broad understanding. Once you have broad understanding, then art of writing, and precisely the question which has been asked. So do you think that it is still relevant? Partly yes. We see that how America is being balanced, how in wake of growing and rising China, America is balancing, be it through Quad or be it through AUKUS, or be it through trade war, or be it through other non-military means. Soft balancing is there. So it is there in Indo-China relationship, for example. For soft balancing, we are engaging more with Japan, Australia, America to counterbalance the advantage of China. Because China would be more assertive if it will have disproportionately more power than India. Same is the case. Pakistan is trying to balance India by having close, friendly and deeper relationship with China. Similarly, America, in anticipation that China in future may challenge it and challenge its hegemony, is going for various soft balancing acts. So in this way, it's still relevant. We cannot say that balance of power as a concept is over, it is of no use today. We have so many examples, so it is still relevant, although it's not typical European balance of power system. So the system that developed after 1991, Cobb-Webb model, in contrast to billiards ball model. Question is relating to balance of power. You have to primarily focus on billiards ball model. This is only reference. That Cobb-Webb model, where it is in era of information and communication technology. Here states are not hard shells colliding with each other. States are porous, in contrast to billiards ball model. Here the era of hyper globalization and functionalism, that is people to people contact, that is not only focus is not state, focus is society. In Cobb-Webb model, there is more social relation among the people of nation states. There is concept of global citizenship instead of national citizenship. There is supranationalism in Europe. So all these things cobweb model has changed typical European balance of power system. But balance of power as a concept, because question is not saying European balance of power system, it is regarding balance of power system. So within balance of power system, major central subset is European balance of power system, but it is not all that European balance of power system is being asked. It is in general. So we have seen how balancing is different from bandwagoning, how soft balancing acts are used, how non-military means are being used, how all countries are involved in such acts. Still, we have alliances, we have counter alliances, still we have a strategic relationship. For example, we don't believe in alliance politics as a country, India, but we are going for various strategic relationship with major powers to address the threat from north without naming China. So in this way you will be able to write a good answer. You have all understanding of the question. Now how you will write this question, now we'll see that right from the first page. So we are going to first page from the very question. Yeah, the question is, the notion of balance of power is notoriously full of confusion. First part of the question. So first you have to explain how you will write this. First start with the power. Power is the ability or capacity of more powerful to influence the action and behavior of less powerful in a desired manner. It's a relational concept, and balance of power does mean a rough equilibrium in power distribution. And if there is a balance in power, there will be no incentive for war, but disequilibrium in power distribution would be leading to war and imperfections, confusion. So once you have explained, and this you have to highlight the theoretical background, that how it comes under a realist domain, balance of power, how it's a relational concept, how in realist concept, realism means power politics. It involves centrality of power politics in contrast to idealism. So power politics and what is balance of power you have already explained. Then you have to further move to write the answer. That as far as typical European balance of power system was concerned, that was prevailing mainly for the period 1600 to 1900. And afterwards it was replaced by idealism of collective security in terms of League of Nations and United Nations. In one line only you are referring League of Nations and United Nations. Don't refer League of Nations or United Nations or collective security more than that. Only one line, only in contrast, only to differentiate the era. So once, because question is regarding balance of power, so other things you are referring only to understand this one. The question is this, not that. It's not regarding balance, collective security and all that. So this was prevailing this point of time, where 6 to 7 European countries were at the center of world politics. They were European rival, they were European imperial countries, you can refer the name as well. And after 30 years of war, Treaty of Westphalia, nation state was recognized as fundamental unit of international relations, with the mutual and reciprocal recognition of state sovereignty, state nationality, state citizenship, state boundaries, states' right of safety, defense and security. In one line you have to refer Treaty of Westphalia. However, it was not natural. You have to write the other side of the coin. Although it helped in developing international peace in Europe, but it was neither natural nor divine. So periodically it was disturbed, and countries tried to disturb in their favor, be it Napoleon or be it afterwards Hitler, although Hitler was after this. But this was transitional phase. Till 1945 there was dilution of balance of power system, and with the balance of terror, typical European balance of power system ended. So you have to write this, and there were so many wars. Then you have to write the presumptions of balance of power. That in balance of power system, typical European balance of power system, groupings were formed based on national interest, which was dynamic rather than ideology. So switching sides was easier, and Britain played the role of laughing third. So this was the explaining confusion, uncertainty, unpredictability, alliances, counter alliances, secret alliances. Adding to that confusion, mercantilism, imperialism, rivalry, lack of global governance, poor international laws, poor international governance, weak international laws, anarchic international system were also responsible for fluid, uncertain, unpredictable relationship. And then there was no deterrence, nuclear deterrence, as wars were waged with traditional weapons. So even a defeated country would get the re-entry. These things you have to write in this. So you have to further write that it is balance of power system is considered to be billiard balls model, which was given by Wolfers. You can write Arnold Wolfers, or if don't remember the scholar's name, does not matter, because concept is more important. If a particular person who gave this concept not knowing, that does not matter. But if you write, it will be good. So billiards ball model, where 6 to 7 European countries were colliding as hard shells. They were non-porous, and state was playing the role only in communication. State-centric balance of power system was there. And then you have to further elaborate that balance of power believes, since it is in realist domain, so it has presumption that antidote of power is power only and power exclusively, and power cannot be counterbalanced by any other factor except power. So this is how you are explaining every presumption of balance of power system. Then switching sides, confusion, all those things you have clarified. Now you will further go to say that since wars were waged with traditional weapons, so there was no threat of annihilation of the whole world. Unlike nuclear age, again you are contrasting. Question is not regarding nuclear age or after Cold War. So only contrast. So even a defeated country would get re-entry. And how countries were going for balancing? One was internal exercise, another was external exercise. Internally, they will increase their military strength, political strength, economic strength, so that they do get parity or edge over their rival, and others were doing the same. And external, if they are not able to do it alone, they will be going for alliances and with other countries to counterbalance. And in one line you can write 7 means of balancing the power. Then realism, which is balance of power, is in realist domain, not in idealist domain. Believes in safety, survival, self-help, no permanent friends and foes, because national interest is dynamic, and in whole Europe only liberalism, capitalism was prevailing. So there was no question of ideological rivalry. It was purely based on national interest, which was quite dynamic. So no permanent friends and foes also made the situation more fluid, uncertain, and full of confusion. That is the question given. Then you have to write that how balancing act is different from bandwagoning. Bandwagoning believes that cost of balancing a major power is more, far more. So cost of balancing is far more. So it, instead of balancing, it works within hegemonic system, to serve national interest, like India followed in 1990s in relation to US. It was not trying to balance US in 90s. And this so the secondary powers also in the present context use soft balancing acts, but through non-military means, that you have to refer. Then further you will be writing that how it was notoriously fluid, notoriously full of confusion, and miscalculation also was another reason for imperfections. And all those reasons I have written: confusion, fluid situation, uncertainty, rivalry, changing sides, secret alliances, mercantilism, confusion, miscalculation, all these things during balance of power system was making the substantiating the statement given in the question. I am again saying that by and large the statement is correct, but it's not absolute truth. As I said, it was neither natural nor divine. So you have to be careful regarding that. That it's not an absolute truth. It's by and large truth. So imperialism and other reasons were also there for balance of power system. Imperialism was also responsible, and it was multipolar system with major powers. There were no superpowers, unlike Cold War. And then you have to highlight the realism that how international laws are weak laws, how international political system is not a proper political system. All these things you are explaining. Then you are coming to the second part of the question, that do you think that it is still relevant? So again you have to write that typical European balance of power system is over with the advent of collective security and United Nations based on collective security. Moreover, with Cold War, balance of terror replaced typical European balance of power system. But as a concept, it continued even during Cold War and afterwards. During Cold War, both superpowers were balancing the power of each other, and after end of Cold War, we have cobweb model, and in this the balance of power is also partly relevant, and it is followed by all countries. I have given so many examples, like in mostly soft balancing acts are being used by the secondary powers, and particularly you will see that you can refer BRICS, you can refer Quad, you can refer AUKUS. Some are military, some are soft, some are hard. It's not that in 21st century there is no hard balancing act. Mainly it is soft balancing, but not solely. So there are some hard balancing acts as well. This is the reason why we have war, we have military means, we have the unilateralism, and this is being followed by all countries, because countries always go for calculation of their relative power. And this in balance of power is still relevant, because realism is called timeless wisdom. Means irrespective of time, irrespective of the world order, irrespective of the situation, it will be always relevant, and it will be always followed by countries, and 21st century is not exception. In this way you have to conclude this answer. So I hope you are in position to write an ideal answer, and you have ample contents, and you are writing the answer with holistic understanding. It's not that all confusion, like for one way of writing would be to accept the statement as absolute truth, and you hold balance of power system only and exclusively responsible for all notoriety, all confusion, all uncertainty, and all fluidity in that time period. It was one of the reasons. The other reasons, the other perspective you should not miss. I always emphasize that don't accept a statement given as absolute truth. Partly, mainly it was correct, no doubt. But you have to highlight at the same time limitations. It was not alone responsible. So in this way, you will be able to write a perfect answer, I hope. So all the best. Thank you. कितने मिनट